The cover of my book has a rather large image of a white heart and really crevices, fissures, very small cracks that are filled, it looks as though, with gold. And it really serves as a metaphor for how I feel about marriage or partnerships or relationships. In my case, my book was about my marriage to my husband of 47 years. The heart is a wonderful representation of the Japanese philosophy of kintsugi. And for those of you who don't know what kintsugi is, which I did not know too much about it when I began, kintsugi is, for example, when one drops a plate or dish and it goes into many pieces, and your decision, which is what life is all about, decisions and then choices, your decision is, well, it's in a million pieces. Should I just throw it in the garbage? Or should I maybe go to Home Depot and fill it with, super glue and keep it, but then you always see the cracks. And what the Japanese decided in the 15th century was they were going to fill these cracks with resin that had liquid gold flowing in it, so that when it dried, and it took a long time, it might have taken months or years to dry, when it dried, what you had, because it flowed gold, was actually more beautiful than the plain white heart on the cover of my book would be. And so I use it to explain that, yes, when a marriage gets difficult or a relationship gets difficult, you can either say, look, this can't be repaired, and maybe some relationships shouldn't be repaired. I don't know. But it's a choice. Do you repair it? Do you throw it in the garbage? And then if you decide to repair it, the work and effort, which is really in a marriage the gold, that's what you see. But you also see, as time goes by, not only kintsugi, but something called wabi-sabi, which says when you look at something that's broken and repaired, you then say, wait a second, there are imperfections, but this is more beautiful than when it began. And so I use kintsugi as a really good metaphor for a marriage. Which do you choose to do? Additionally, I look at marriage in 3 stages. The first stage is, in any relationship, it's great. There may be chemistry, there may be excitement, there may be some minor cracks, but you really don't focus on them. And that's the early stage. Then we get to the middle years, and the middle years are when anything that can go wrong does. Because now you're in a stressful situation. Either there's a woman's issue, which there was for a very long time and still is, where you have a job all day and then you come home and you're still possibly the primary caregiver. Or somebody loses their job, or your mortgage you thought was fine and then the roof goes down. So all these stresses come. Or children, which when they're little are dependent, and when they're bigger, they're teenagers, and anyone who's raised a teenager does not have to have me explain that stress. If you do, as kintsugi did, take the gold or the work, and it's very hard to repair, but if you do that, the last section, the later years, are actually great, because you know what you had to do to repair it. It was in those middle years, because we were married at 20 in those days, and then at 47 years old, so we were married about 27 years. And it was in those middle years that the cracks just got wider. And they got wider because no one was doing anything wrong. No one did something to hurt the other. However, my husband was very busy with his work. I was very busy with my work. We were busy taking care of the children. We were busy building a life. We wanted to increase our importance in our work. We were following our passions. But what happened was we were going in separate directions without realizing it. And so we began to separate without separating. We had similar goals. We were taking care of our family, our responsibility. He cooked for me, I cooked for him. We did what we needed to for children. We didn't realize it was impacting them as well. And so it was just people being too busy and sort of separating without understanding we were separating. And we just didn't understand it, but all of a sudden, there was no love in that house. There was love that was basic for our family, for each other, based on the fact that we had been together. But that in-love piece, that understanding that for me, marriage is a combination of magic and logic. There was no more magic. There was no great love in the house. And after a while, we just started to drift. And once we drifted, and I realized there was no love there, I couldn't stay married. And I told him, a man who worked so hard in everything, I told him he'd have to go because there was no love in the house. And he was not happy either. So at that point, we decided that it was better, or I decided, and he just looked at me in the beginning, and he couldn't believe it. But I said, think about it. Are you happy? Are you enjoying this marriage? And he realized he wasn't either. And so we decided that it was time to separate. And then a funny thing happened on the way to the separation. What happened was he understood. It took about 6 days of conversation, and he understood that it wasn't going to work. And he got in his car one Saturday evening, about 6 days after this all happened, and he had packed a little backpack, and he said, all right, I'm going to find a place because you don't want me here anymore, and I'm not happy either. And off he went, and he got in his car. And I could see outside my kitchen window because I have all glass that focuses and faces on where the cars park. And off he went down the road of our street, and when he got to the corner, there was a stop sign. And I was waiting, standing by the sink, excuse me, and I saw him stop at the stop sign, and I knew as he made that left, the life I had was over. And he got to the stop sign, and he turned the car around, and he came back. And I opened the door, and I said, what are you doing here? And he said, I know I have to leave. I know the marriage is over. I know you don't love me anymore. I just don't know how to do it, and you have to help me. And first I looked at him like he was insane. And I said, what do you mean? He said, I'll do this. I understand, but I need your help. And he said, can we at least have a meal where you explain to me how you might help me, because I can't do this by myself. So off we went to like a little French bistro that wasn't in our area, and we sat there, and I said, well, you talk first. And he did, and he explained, and then I explained, but we both understood we were not going to stay married. And then I figured out a plan, a system, because I'm a very organized girl. And we sat there, and I said, okay, we're going to have conversations, because the one thing my husband and I could do was have a conversation. We had done it since we were 17 years old, so we knew how to talk. We just had gone in separate ways. And that was the process we used. We used conversation. Went to a park bench or a bench by a delicious cafe con leche stand, because I live in Miami and we thrive on cafe con leche. And we sat there and we had conversations for months. And then we decided that we could put the marriage back together. But it was awful, It was gut-wrenching, but we both knew because we were buddies as well as lovers. God gave Adam a secret, and that secret was not how to begin, but how to begin again. As I begin each chapter with a quote, it sort of marries what I feel, and then I put it and share it because it keeps me grounded in what I'm really trying to say to you and to share with the reader. And it helps me, and then they have something to hold on to as well. During the latter part of our marriage, we had to go to various weddings and parties. And when we did, and it was very interesting what happened, we would see a couple older than us dancing together. And we now understood that when we see a couple who's been together a while, and you see them, everything looks great. I mean, people would look at us in our lady part of our marriage, and they'd say, wow, Arlene and Howard, they really have a great marriage, and everything is great for them, and isn't this, long marriage? But what happened was, while we were dancing and we saw the older couples dancing, we then would look in each other's eyes, and we would know, we would just know without saying it, that there was sorrow behind there, and then there was joy. There was joy. And that joy, we understood was at this moment, but we knew what was behind it.